Hannibal doesn't fully trust the Gauls, but eventually accepts their help. The Gauls direct Hannibal to a narrow pass which leads to a gorge.
Hannibal's original suspicions were right on. The guides suddenly bolt.
It's a trap. 218 BC, Hannibal leads his Carthaginian army over the treacherous Alps to invade Rome. Along the way, marauding Gauls ambush Hannibal with a barrage of boulders and arrow fire.
Hannibal encounters different tribes throughout his campaign. They were mainly Gauls. This is a tribal people who lived in what's now modern-day France. They're not a unified people and usually don't ally themselves against a common enemy. So sometimes they'll join his war on Rome, and other times they'll attack him.
In this case, the Gauls are out for blood. The gorge turns into a gauntlet of death.
Gauls block both ends of the gorge, but Hannibal's troops fight their way out, leaving the butchered enemy in their wake. After some 30 grueling days, Hannibal and his men emerge from the Alps. When they finally arrive on the northern plains of Italy, nearly a third of Hannibal's army has perished.
They lose about 18,000 infantry, about a third of the cavalry, which would be maybe 4,000 horse. You know, we arrive with, say, 27 elephants. You lose a third of the elephants.
But Hannibal has always known the crossing would be costly. From the very beginning of the war, he's had a plan to replenish his forces, a plan that relied on his elephants.
Part of Hannibal's strategy in crossing the Alps was that he understood that he didn't have enough manpower to fight the Romans. Therefore, he would have to acquire it once he got into Italy. How was he going to do that? He was going to do that by attracting to his standard the Gauls, the Celts and Gauls, who hated the Romans because they've been fighting one another for 500 years, and hopefully as well get some Roman allied states to defect. So the reason for bringing the 37 elephants over the Alps was really to impress, in a political sense, both the Gauls and the allied states that this was a serious army.
Hannibal's elephants thunder into northern Italy. They successfully lure Gallic tribes to the Carthaginian side. By November 218 BC, Hannibal's numbers swell to nearly 40,000. Rome answers with 40,000 of its own soldiers to face Hannibal's threat. Both armies are now on a collision course that will rock the ancient world and rewrite military history.
The armies of Carthage and Rome couldn't be more different. Hannibal's men are mercenary soldiers from all over the map.
Hannibal's army is from different parts of the region, many of them mercenaries, drawn to his legendary leadership in battle. The light infantry are from Libya. These men carry a small round shield and fight with a small sword or javelin. Heavy infantry are warriors from Gaul, men who run into battle naked, intimidating their enemies with their deadly two-handed broadswords. Heavy cavalry is from Spain and Northern Europe. Their weapon of choice is either a bowed sword called a falcata or a deadly longsword.
Hannibal's ability to orchestrate these different types of forces in a coordinated attack is what makes him truly a remarkable general. The Roman army is much different than Hannibal's forces. Where the Carthaginians are very diverse, the Romans are quite uniform.
Roman soldiers are ablaze in armor. Bronze helmets protect their heads. Chainmail or brass breastplates defend their bodies. Each soldier carries one of history's deadliest throwing spears, the pilum.
That long metal rod was made of soft metal with a hook. When it went through the shield, the weight of the wooden body would bend it. You couldn't take the pilum out of the shield. Now the enemy had a choice of fighting with a shield with a spear stuck into it, or what they foolishly did very often is simply throw the shield away. Not a good move against Roman infantry.
Slaughter also comes in the form of a straight sword, forged of iron, ideal for up-close and personal combat. Their scutum shield provides almost complete protection from missile attacks. While Hannibal's army is cobbled together, his opponent is a much more cohesive fighting force.
The Roman army was a true national army. They all spoke the same language, they all had the same equipment, and they were all trained to the same tactics.
But the most significant difference is their style of battle.
So you have this Roman force of highly disciplined citizen soldiers equipped and trained to go straight at the enemy against a group of professionals that can hit you in any number of ways.
At the Ticinus River, these radically different fighting styles clash in a hurricane of violence.
Hannibal's light cavalry surround the Romans, slash at the Roman cavalry, then back off, then re-attack. It's chaos and confusion, not what the Romans are used to.
The blood of 2,000 slain Roman soldiers drenches the ground. It is a shocking defeat.
The key point about the little skirmish at the Ticinus River was that Publius Scipio was wounded.
The Romans replaced Scipio with General Sempronius Longus, a strong leader with an even stronger temper.
Sempronius is a hothead. He's desperate for glory, and his one-year term as army commander is almost up. He's champing at the bit to fight, and Hannibal knows it.
Some evidence of Hannibal's brilliance as a military commander was the fact that he studied his adversaries closely. Now, where he got this information isn't clear. Surely the number of Roman commanders was relatively small, and so they would have been well known. But also my guess is that the truly excellent Carthaginian intelligence may have been at work here, so that whenever he was prepared for a battle, he knew who was in command on the other side, and he studied him closely, knew for his strengths and weaknesses. And in the case of Sempronius, he knew Sempronius well. He knew he was a hothead, and he played him like a fiddle.
The two enemy armies camp on opposite sides of the Trebia River, about 70 short yards apart.
It's not much of an obstacle in a physical sense, but it can become an obstacle when you realize that if you have to cross it, it's November, it's gray, and it's snowing. And so that's going to be, any army that tries to cross that river under those conditions is going to suffer somewhat.
Hannibal's strategy? Take advantage of the frigid temperatures, the Roman commander's fiery temper, and use the element of surprise.
He sends 2,000 or 3,000 cavalry in the early morning dawn across the river to attack the Roman camp.
The Romans are shocked awake. They stumble around the cold with no food. The Roman general Sempronius is furious. He orders the men to cross the river and attack, so they plunge into the icy water to chase Hannibal's men. Not the best way to start your day.
40,000 Roman infantry and 4,000 cavalry cross the river. They line up for battle in a formation called a legio, made up of several maniples.
Maniple literally means a handful of men. Each maniple consists of about 120 soldiers.
The Romans arrange themselves in a checkerboard configuration. This is a force specifically designed to move forward and crush its enemy. But Hannibal has his own crushing machines. Pachyderms, the heavy tanks of the Carthaginian army. They charge at the flanks of the Roman cavalry.
Nearly impervious to spears, the elephant's earth-shaking assault scatters the allied horsemen in sheer terror.
Hannibal's cavalry, 10,000 strong, far outnumbers the Romans.
His Numidian cavalry is so fast and agile that they appear to be everywhere at once.
Hannibal's heavy Spanish and Celtic cavalry slam with such force, they demolish what's left of the Roman cavalry.
Hannibal's Carthaginian cavalry turns inward and smashes the Roman flanks. Hannibal surrounds the Romans on 3 sides, but he is not done yet. Hannibal has just crossed the Trebia River and has a bloody surprise for the Roman army. Using specially trained horses, Hannibal has successfully hidden cavalry in the tall grass.
Trumpet blasts and an elite Carthaginian cavalry force charges from the swamp. The Romans turn around to see 2,000 horses storm up from behind. It must have been absolutely terrifying.
The Carthaginian cavalry blindsides the Romans, who are then pushed back toward the river and cut down mercilessly.
Of the 40,000 men, Roman and allies, that took the field that day, 30,000 died. 30,000 met their deaths on the bank of the Trebia River. It was the worst defeat that the Romans had suffered since the defeat against the Gauls 125 years earlier.
The Battle of the Trebia is an absolutely classic example of how to use tactical surprise at a key moment in the battle. The result was complete slaughter.
Hannibal does suffer losses at Trebia. All but one of his elephants die of starvation or exhaustion. He rides the lone survivor named Sirius. The horror of Trebia spurs the Roman Senate to raise 4 new legions.